In this video, we're uncovering the hybrid warfare blueprint Ukraine used to bypass one of the most defended sectors in Western Russia. You'll see how decoys, jammers, and precision missiles operated in perfect sync, and what made the Kasuka 4 system's electronic fog so effective. By the end, you'll understand exactly why Russian radars never saw the attack coming, and how this strategy could signal a new doctrine for the future battlefield. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. At 5:14 a.m. on October 1st, 2025, a ripple moved through Russia's western radar grid that no one could explain. On duty at the Belgorod Early Warning Center, a crew chief stared at screens that seconds earlier had been alive with contact markers. They vanished one by one until only the baseline map remained. Systems still showed power, but the air looked empty. Within 180 seconds, every S-400 Triumph radar in the sector stopped returning data. The operators cross-checked network links, then satellite relays. Assuming a relay fault, no signal returned. The network had gone silent, but not offline, the most frustrating kind of blackout a defense operator can face. From the Ukrainian side, the activation signal for Kasuka 4 had already completed its cycle. Buried under a reinforced structure outside Kharkiv, an electronic warfare crew watched readouts spike across multiple frequency bands. Their instruments didn't show strength, they showed distortion. A dense electromagnetic field spread from each antenna node, layering over civilian and military communication zones like mist on water. The filtering software inside Russian radars tried to separate signal from noise but failed. It was the digital version of staring into fog where every reflection bends light the wrong way. Russian command posts pushed emergency frequency shifts. Each change only fed data back into the interference cloud. Inside the launch batteries, intercept crews waited for the green reticle that confirmed a track lock. It never appeared. Missile systems were functional yet blind, their targeting sensors unable to distinguish echo from ground clutter. Some believed it was a temporary overload, others suspected cyber intrusion. The order to hold fire spread across encrypted channels that half the receivers never heard. Kasuka 4 wasn't designed to burn circuits or melt receivers. It worked quietly through an approach known as a soft kill. Instead of destroying equipment, it removed the meaning from every signal. That separation between function and awareness was what made it so effective. Computers continued to process data that equaled nothing. On radar displays, incoming objects read as low-priority anomalies, then disappeared as though absorbed into the landscape. On the Ukrainian side of the border, coordination was as precise as the jamming itself. The team inside Kharkiv's bunker monitored telemetry without audio communication, relying solely on numerical feedback. Frontline operators handling launcher arrays worked under silence protocols. Their data packets were transferred via secure fiber until the last moment when fiber gave way to narrowband line of sight relays. Even GPS guidance for their own equipment became unreliable inside the fog. The teams compensated through inertial tracking, old school yet dependable. Over Belgorod's ridges, Russian patrol drones attempted visual scanning after command calculated they could still navigate under optical modes. But the same electromagnetic disruption that blinded radar also interfered with their digital sensors. Cameras filled with static bursts and visual contrast shifted unpredictably. Human operators couldn't trust what they saw. The fog was not natural. It was built by algorithms replicating radar return patterns meant to mimic silence. Where there should have been at least ambient ground noise, there was none, a crafted emptiness convincing enough to appear normal. By 5:17 a.m., attempts to reboot the S-400 guidance network failed. Radio operators reported background hiss even on backup analog channels. Coordination nodes that linked the radar grid to interceptor batteries stalled in data feedback loops, repeating empty packets. Superiors demanded diagnostics, unaware that their system was still seeing. Only what it saw was deliberate deception. Kasuka 4 completed its job without revealing origin or signature, leaving Russian defenses looking into manufactured void. The blackout wasn't brute force, it was precise misdirection coded to shape perception. Every radar pulse that returned carried a false echo indicating clear skies. To operators, the battlefield appeared calm. In that artificial calm, the defenses stood down, unknowing that the strike zone had already opened, and the corridor through static was waiting for the next wave. With the radar grid drowned in static, the next question was how to strike a target the enemy could no longer see, but still knew how to defend. The Novi Oskol substation sat deep in fog and terrain folds that even satellite imaging struggled to outline. Ukrainian planners sent 6 Shark drones forward, flying barely 50 feet above the tree canopy. Each one carried both observation optics and emitters that could shape radar returns. They moved in staggered formation, leading smaller FPV drones that followed preset routes, almost brushing the forest tops. Their goal was not only to observe, but to distort, to fill the newly created fog with movement that meant nothing. The first Russian Panzer crews saw what looked like irregular contacts circling the perimeter of the substation. The signatures flickered between aircraft and small birds, too slow for missiles, too fast for weather drift. Operators chose to engage. Interceptors launched toward reflections that dissolved before impact. What seemed like a successful lock broke into static again. That uncertainty forced another volley, burning through expensive ordnance against non-existent targets. The Ukrainian swarm had done its job without firing a weapon. Each FPV drone towed a canister of radar reflective chaff tuned to release in pulses. When the pods dispersed their load, clouds of metallic filaments spread wide, reflecting enough radar energy to create the illusion of dozens of fast-moving objects. Those returns bounced back to enemy scopes as synthetic shapes coded to mimic natural formations. In the chaos of electromagnetic interference, the displays blurred into a storm of motion. Human eyes and algorithms alike failed to isolate real trajectories. Inside the swarm, one Shark drone stood apart from the electronic confusion. It carried a stabilized laser designator aimed directly at the substation's main transformer. The beam stayed locked, even as the air shimmered with interference. Because laser light followed its own narrow path unaffected by radio jamming, it became the one reliable signal in a sea of noise. Through that invisible thread, guidance data was sent back to the firing crews preparing the HIMARS launch sequence west of the border. When the missiles lifted, they accelerated to Mach 5 within seconds, their guidance relying first on inertial navigation, then switching to corrections fed by the same laser beacon. No radio chatter crossed the air, communication stayed silent, the adjustments encoded in the beam's subtle variations. Each course update arrived in milliseconds, allowing the warheads to adjust their trajectory in mid-flight, even inside the electromagnetic fog. The radar silence that crippled defenses now protected the attackers. There was no emission to trace, no signature to intercept. Meanwhile, the decoy drones executed one more trick. Their onboard pattern emitters duplicated missile signatures. To Russian sensors, several high-speed objects appeared to dive from multiple azimuths. Counter radars fragmented their attention, splitting fire between phantoms and the true inbound tracks. A Panzer unit launched 3 57E6 interceptors. One detonated against a chaff cloud, another lost lock to an electronic bleed, the third exploded prematurely after striking a false flare. The control screens filled with losses counted as successes until recalibration proved otherwise. On the ground, none of the defenders knew a real missile had already broken through. The first HIMARS guided itself along the laser reflection, caught by thermal scatter below the fog layer, diving at the transformer compound. Twin flashes merged into a glare that cracked every circuit panel within the grid. Power siphon lines shut down instantly. Within 90 seconds, over a fifth of the regional military network went dark. Energy feeds to radar depots, encrypted radio relays, and nearby fuel systems all cut mid-operation. Explosions heard in Belgorod's western sector were mistaken at first for equipment failure. By the time confirmation arrived, the electronic fog had folded over the area again, erasing any follow-up telemetry. In the bunker east of Kharkiv, operators watched the cascade of blacked-out nodes on their screens and understood that the path through the fog had stayed open only long enough for precision to find its mark. The next move would come not from missiles but from doctrine shaped by deception itself.